Hello guys, today we're going to be doing a video on God of War using the RTX 3050. We're running a Ryzen 3700X with 32 GB of RAM running at 3200 MHz. Alright, let's jump into the settings. We're going to be playing the game at 1080p on the low settings. We're going to be playing the game with the preset and no DLSS yet, but if you fall below 60 FPS at any point, I will enable DLSS and we'll see how the quality looks and how much of a performance headroom we get. Alright, let's jump into it. Alright, let's get going. We're going to be starting it off with the CPU side of things just to see how the CPU performs, if there's any bottlenecks. But so far it looks like GPU is fully maxed out already on 1080p low, which is good to see. CPU looks like we're using up 4 to 6 cores, which is really nice to see because most games don't usually take advantage of all the extra cores that we have available to us. Most use up 4, on average it's like 4. And some games still use 2, but not very common anymore. But God of War looks like it's using up 4 to 6. Kind of hard to play and take a look at the graph, but I mean the overlay. But it looks like we're spiking up to 70% on some cores. On average, just sitting at 25 to 38. Alright, let's do a bit more 1080p low gameplay. We already did a bunch with the CPU tests, but we'll just add a bit more to it. Now, FPS seems to be sitting in the high 70s to the high 90s, so it's a wide range. Hopefully we don't fall into the 60s, we shouldn't, but if we do, then we have DLSS available to us. I'm not sure how it will actually look at 1080p, because I've only used it at 1440p and 4K, and that looked really good. But yeah, it'd be nice to see how it looked at 1080p as well. Alright, let's go ahead and bump it up to medium settings, or in this case, it's called original. But let's see how it runs. Okay, 70 FPS. 77. So far, oh, 63, wow. So when we pan the camera, we actually lost a lot of frames. Just doing a quick pan. Our actual frame rate range has dropped as well. We are 60, 59 FPS, wow. So we've actually fallen from the high 90s, from the high 70s to the high 90s to the low 60s to the high 70s, so that's a huge decrease. The game does look better obviously as well. It's not a decent jump, it's a decent bump in quality, but so far low seems to be very good, a very good balance between quality and performance. We did fall below 60 for a split second as well, looking over the water, but that was still super close to 60. We only dropped by like 1 frame into the 50s. So it looks like once we get some particles on the screen, like the icy effect of the axe, that has a huge impact on our performance as well. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into high settings. Alright, we got into another fight scene, so it's probably a good time to push it up to high. And I believe high is the second last preset. It goes high and ultra. High and then ultra, yeah, seems about right. And yeah, VRAM sitting at almost 5 gigs and Ultra sitting at 6 gigs, wow. So 1440p and 4K, I mean this card isn't obviously made for 1440p and 4K, but you'll probably be running into a VRAM issue anyway if you want to push it up to 1440p and 4K at a higher preset. Wow, even at high settings we're falling below 60, I guess. Kind of should have seen this one coming since we're sitting in the low 70s at medium, so obviously with high we're going to fall even lower into the low 60s, into the low 50s, especially after you get hit with all the bloody effects happening on your screen. That's also causing us a further FPS drop as well. Now I've gone ahead and enabled DLSS, and it's set to quality right now, so it's running at 720p native and it's being upscaled to 1080p with DLSS obviously, and frame rate didn't get too much of an improvement. I was expecting us to be all the way back up into the mid to high 70s, and it looks like we gained like 6 to 10 FPS. So we can be in the mid 60s to the mid 70s at times. It's very rare, but it does happen. And here we're sitting in the mid 50s to low 50s. So I guess it's actually a decent improvement anyway, so can't really complain. Looking at the image quality, it does look pretty good even at 1080p. DLSS is meant to be use a 1440p and 4K. It looks the best in those resolutions. Obviously, you can still use it at 1080p to gain a free performance boost. But in this case, I would just stick to either low or medium settings, since the bump up to high doesn't really gain us too much visual quality compared to how much we lose in terms of our performance. 1080p Ultra. Had to wait till we got another fight scene just so we can stress test the preset. And while playing normally, I was sitting in the low 50s to the mid 40s. It feels pretty laggy on a keyboard and mouse. Just the camera movement feels pretty laggy, and the fighting here also doesn't feel the best. Now it seems like the FPS is tied to our frame rate, because sometimes when I'm panning the camera around or just turning around in general, the camera movement will just randomly speed up or randomly slow down, and it's very hard to get used to because it's just random. So you probably want to cap your frame rate to either 30 or 60, or like whatever frame rate you can actually hold consistently, because the mouse movement's kind of crazy. Alright, now turning on DLSS set to ultra quality, or just quality I mean, we are getting pretty bad performance still. We still get consistent frame drops into the 40s and 50s, but the highs have actually increased up into the mid 70s, the low 70s. Gone ahead and restarted the game. Now we're running the game at 1440p low settings, and I gotta say, this game resolution means more than the actual quality presets, because playing at high and ultra, I didn't really see too much of a difference between all four. Maybe low and medium, there's a slight jump, but between high and ultra, there's not really too much of a difference. So I would just stick with low and original if you want to play this game with this card. And at 1440p, this game looks crazy crisp, crazy good. I don't really see anything wrong with the visual effects or anything that's going on the screen right now. But the frame rate here is much better than what we had at 1080p on Ultra. We're sitting in the mid 40s to the mid 50s occasionally, and even with DLSS we couldn't get a consistent 60 FPS experience going. But at 1440p we're getting some dips into the high 50s, but majority of the time we're sitting in the 60s, in the high 60s. Now playing the game at 4K low settings, it looks like we're playing in the mid 30s to the low 40s. Now using the mouse here, it feels really laggy, really unplayable pretty much. But with the controllers, play will feel fine. And I gotta say, this is the best case scenario right here. There's nothing going on, there's no action, there's no enemies, there's no particles on the screen, we're just running around and we're chilling in the mid 30s. So if you get into a fight or something like that happens, then you are sitting in the low 30s, maybe dipping into the high 20s. So 4K is kind of out of the question, and DLSS will give you an extra 10 FPS on quality, and then as you go up to balance and performance, you probably gain 20 to 25 FPS difference as well. Let's go ahead and test that out with DLSS assisted performance just to see if we can get a 60 FPS experience going. Looks like we can sit on the edge of 60 with 4K performance DLSS. Now let's go ahead and test out quality DLSS as well, just to see difference between the two in quality and performance. We're getting mid 30s native and then 60 FPS with performance. So quality mode puts us in between all that, I guess, and we're sitting in the 50s. It's the low 50s, we're sitting on 50 exactly. So 14 FPS difference between quality and performance, and a 15 FPS difference between native and quality. Alright, that's it for the video guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. If you did, give it a like and a subscription, really highly appreciate it. See you next time.